Okay, we've been speaking with Dr. Kabir Adamu on the crises that have befallen Nigeria and appear not to be ending quickly. Now, let's come back to you, Doctor. If you look at what happened in Plateau State the last few days and stories that ISWAP is seeking to set up a base in Plateau State, that appears to me to be very threatening, that maybe we are not taking the threat posed by these non-violent, these non-state actors. We are not taking their threats seriously.
Yeah, yes, we certainly are not taking their threat seriously. We started this conversation by saying the gravity of the issues would have demanded our highest Security Council to sit and discuss the issues and find a way forward. That hasn't happened, and the issues are continuing. Now, the theory that perhaps the reason why we're seeing attacks in Plateau is because one of the ideological non-state armed groups is wanting to find an enclave in Plateau State. I don't want us to lose track of the reasons for the violence in Plateau State. The reasons are well documented. Several panels of inquiry. The most popular is the Justice Nikki Toby panel of inquiry, looked into that crisis and has made far-reaching recommendations. So maybe the beginning of our finding the solution is to look at that report and ask critical questions. Why haven't the recommendations of that report been implemented? As an example, if the issue is land grabbing, like it's constantly being mentioned, what is stopping the state government from titling the land? Through titling the land, you would address that challenge, you will empower the people, you would get revenue. So what is the issue? I must tell you that I have studied extensively the crisis in Plateau State. And if I'm going to give blames, almost 75 to 80% of the blame, I'm going to put it on the shoulders of the government. I haven't seen credible effort at addressing the insecurity and, more importantly, in investing in peace building. Because you can, like you asked earlier on, solve the challenge, but if you don't invest in peace building, then it's going to be a cycle. Another challenge which we must address, and we're not discussing enough at the moment, is the role of the security forces, the public security forces. Have they now become an active player in the eco space of the economy of violence in the state, or are they playing their peacekeeping role? There is a lot of allegation against the conduct of the public security practitioners in the Plateau, both the federal one, which is Operation Safe Haven, as well as the state level one, which is Operation Rainbow. The allegations are manifest, and my worry is I'm not equipped to determine the authenticity of the allegation because I don't have the capabilities. But I'm worried about the consequences. If one side of the conflict believes that those who are supposed to manage security in the space are themselves active, then it's very unlikely that we'll have peace. Because now who now becomes the arbiter? And I think this is the challenge that we're seeing in the Plateau. Again, I started by saying that multitudes of panels of inquiry, commissions of inquiry, name them, administrative bodies that have been set up, have made extensive reports. Till date, we haven't evaluated the extent of implementation of those recommendations and reports. Till date, in spite of several efforts at peacekeeping by the state government, those peacekeeping bodies are not being funded properly. Then the security sector governance I mentioned, there is a special advisor or commissioner on security, a retired military personnel, well respected, intelligent fellow, but how well equipped, how well funded has he been? Does he have the type of structures I talked about earlier on that Lagos has? I doubt. The only thing you hear is the vehicles that have been bought. Then the peacekeeping commission that has been set up in the state, how well funded? the amazing lady that is in charge of that commission, who was brought in from Abuja here, who was doing wonderfully well where she was. Has she been funded enough? Has she been given enough authority and power to carry out the role of peacekeeping and peace building that she's supposed to play? So these are some of the challenges, I think, in the Plateau as far as I'm concerned. We can talk about the capacity of the state to reach out to its neighboring states. We hear that some of the attackers come in from places like Kaduna.
That brings me to the issue of Kaduna. The people there have been complaints too from some Sokapo, I believe, of in southern Kaduna, to the effect that, as the governor of Plateau State said, Plateau State, that 63 settlements had been taken over. The same thing in Kaduna. They said over 53 settlements have been taken over by these violent non-state actors who actually attempting to change the names of those settlements.
The circumstances are almost the same, and I will also kind of ask that critical question: what has stopped the titling of those lands? Because even if somebody grabs the land and you have evidence to show you are the owner of that land, then honestly, I don't see where an argument will come up. But if the land is not titled, and it now becomes a contestation, who has more influence, as it were. So again, I think the solution to all of this lies in the capacity of the state to immediately, and in today's world, Honorable, with GIS, it beats me, honestly. It beats me, because it's going to be a win-win situation for all sides. Title those lands, use GIS to have functional systems, maps, that you can actually document in a manner that it becomes impossible for somebody. Maybe the person can attempt if he has weapons and all of that, but then the legal system will step in and it will show clearly who the owners of the land is. So again, it's like I said in Plateau State, what are we waiting for?
Okay, now let's go back to look at the general view. What do we make of the claim that by the governor of Borno State, who has become very vocal, claiming that the Boko Haram is gaining ground again in Borno State?
So, for me, the worry I had, and which is why I actually started by saying all of these issues are so grave that they would have warranted for the National Security Council to meet. Two of the governors that complained about insecurity to the extent that they went public are from the ruling party, the All Progressive Congress, the governor of Borno State and the governor of Benue State. Now, we can argue that that of Plateau State is from PDP, and so maybe there is a political element in it, but these other two are members of the All Progressive Congress. So yes, Borno State is worrisome. In our report, the same report I cited at the beginning, for Borno State, we recorded in the month of March 66 incidents compared to 44 that occurred in the month of February. And most of those incidents were by one of the ideological non-state armed groups, that's the Islamic State in West Africa province. And the more worrisome part is their use of new methodologies of attacks. So, as unmanned aerial vehicles, and they were now attempting to, tie IEDs to them. The technology was very crude, but the fact that they were attempting to do that was extremely worrisome. I know the military attempted to wave it off, but no, it's worrisome. And with trials and errors, they may end up perfecting that technology. So instead of waving it off, what we need to do is now start thinking of drone systems that will be able to put out those drones the moment we see hostile drones like the type. Then one thing that is also not discussed adequately is the use of those drones, both for surveillance and then for coordinating the movement of their fighters on ground. So they use it for surveillance purposes to see if the Nigerian military is coming towards their side, and then they are able to communicate to their teams, okay, go this way, go that way. So as you can see, it's a force multiplier, and it does give them a lot of advantages. So that's part of the reason why we saw those 66 attacks. And then, interestingly, out of those 66 attacks, 6 of them were against military formation, with 4 using complex attack methods. Complex attack methods is a combination of different methods. So they will use the drones manned with IEDs, they will use suicide bombers, and then they will now have gun boats mounted on vehicles that will now come and attack a particular military formation. And of course, in most instances where there's an attempt at reinforcement, they will now put some form of traps and ambush the reinforcement. So the casualty rate was significantly high during that period. So these are the things that the governor also saw. Remember, the governor has also been pursuing a resettlement plan. Since he came, I think he has resettled over 100 IDP camps, closed almost all of them in the state. But then for the strategic locations, such as Goza, Marte, Kalabalgi, and all of that, where the ISWAP in particular had interest in some of the locations because of the routes, it allowed them access to foreign countries, for supplies of various types, and then some other components of their operation. Now, in those particular locations, they will wait until the resettlement is almost ready, the houses have been built, then they will now start attacking in those locations to prevent the resettlement. So these are things that worried the governor, and then he came out to speak because he didn't want a situation where would go back to the previous period where they were in control of several local governments in the state.
Now, as we run out, what suggestions will you make for us to, because this, as it is now, is unlikely that brute military force will be able to suppress these guys. If you look at the ages of the guys who are involved, very young, very, very young people, and it's like there's always a chance to get new people and indoctrinate them and get them into the bushes.
Exactly. So the answer lies in the 3 instruments that we have for counter-terrorism. That's the National Counter-Terrorism Strategy, the Policy Framework on Countering Violent Extremism, and then the Terrorism Prohibition and Prevention Law as amended in 2022. Now, in those 3 documents, they realize the need for both kinetic and non-kinetic approach to fighting terrorism. And they also recommended that it should be an all-of-government and an all-of-society approach. So that's what we need to do at the moment. Make it an all-of-government and make it an all-of-society approach. I want to wake up to a situation where in the deepest village in Taraba, if you go to the market and you approach an elderly woman selling wares in that market and tell her, Mama, if you see a terrorist, which number would you call? Mama will now tell you the number. Today, even in urban centers, if you go to the market and ask them which number would they call if they see any security information they want to share, they don't know. And that's not the philosophy behind counter-terrorism. Remember, influence is what allows terrorism to grow. We've allowed the terrorist groups to be able to exercise influence on people, especially in vulnerable communities. So the government, especially the state government, the federal government will need to bring the state government into these 3 instruments and then encourage them to talk to the people, explain to the people the need to support these 3 instruments, and then not only that, involve the people in the process, so that, like I said, everybody understands the content of those 3 documents. Once we take out the influence, their ability to generate funding, they're still able to generate funding, the terrorist groups, their ability to recruit new members, like you indicated, they're still able to, their ability to acquire weaponry, their ability to acquire mobility, they're still able to collect motorbikes as ransom when they abduct persons, they're still able to buy fuel for those motorbikes, they're still able to fix those motorbikes when they have mechanical challenges. So what are we talking about? We're not, until we block all of this, the oxygen that allows the group, and we don't need to reinvent anything. All of this is included in these 3 documents. From the National Assembly, and that responsibility to a large extent lies on the National Assembly. They need to play their oversight role adequately. All of these 3 instruments, they need to call on the major players for a report to show the level of implementation. Because in the case of the PCVE, the policy framework on countering violent extremism, it actually has an implementation guideline. So oversight would have been very easy, but again, we're where we are. So the way forward, honestly, is to ensure the full implementation of those three instruments.
Thank you very much. In the last 30 minutes or so, we've been speaking with Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security consultant who has been involved in trying to find solutions to the myriads of challenges that we have in the security sector. Dr. Kabir, thank you for making yourself available and giving us your insights into the situation we have in Nigeria. Thank you for coming.
It's my pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity too. And I must say, I love the way you asked your questions. They were very professional, and hopefully they would add to the solutions that we're looking for to the myriad of security challenges we have in the country.
Thank you very much for staying awake for us.
My pleasure. Take care and good
Thank
night.
you. Good night.